What's going on, everybody? Welcome into TTP Sports. And full disclaimer, I am not sick anymore. I was sick the entire week. I was sick the entire week. That's why you didn't get any recaps. It was one of those just fucking colds that started on Monday. Had a few days where I couldn't fucking breathe whatsoever. And finally started feeling better yesterday. And now we're back in time to discuss a nice Flyers whooping of the New Jersey Devils by a score of 6-3. Very entertaining hockey game. Very entertaining game, if I do say so myself. And this is definitely through a week where there was a lot of frustration with the Flyers fan base, and that's a lot of the result with the Frank Saravalli interview on Snow the Goalie this past Wednesday, I believe, where he was just letting it fly on the Flyers and the way they have gone through the rebuild and the decision-making that they have made. So definitely we could discuss this. I know this is a couple of days after the fact, but since I was sick and not able to really discuss things, I could definitely discuss it right here, and while also going through the process of today's game, which was a very good game by the Flyers. And basically, since that interview by Frank Saravalli, they've played 2 games. They played on Thursday. They won that game in overtime, obviously, because the Flyers just love playing games in overtime. They just can't avoid them. They simply cannot avoid them. Beating the St. Louis Blues after going down 2-0, they find a way to win that, come back and win it in overtime. And then goals galore against the New Jersey Devils. They scored, I think they scored 3 goals in a span of, what was it? Like 20-something seconds, I believe, I think it was. Tyson Forster scoring 2 goals in like 13 seconds or something like that. It was absolutely insane. Matvei Michkov on a breakaway, Forster with 2 beautiful goals. Granted, one of them, Jake Allen, definitely won it back for the Devils. Noah Cates had the first goal of the game. Bobby Brink with an impressive shot in the second period. Trevor Zegras had a beautiful breakaway goal where the Devils were trying to make it a game in that third period, because the Devils definitely were all over the Flyers in the third. They're taking a lot of risks. They're heavy on the forecheck. They're aggressive, and it was giving the Flyers a lot of fits. Dan Vladar was coming up huge. It does say he allowed 3 goals on the goal sheet, but definitely could have been a lot more if Dan Vladar wasn't in net tonight for the Flyers. And there's also a lot of discussion to be had about Dan Vladar, because he just continues to be very good. He continues to be very good. And granted, there's a few games where he has allowed some goals. He has allowed, maybe 4 goals or something like that. But majority of the time Dan Vladar has been in net, he has been something very spectacular for this Flyers team. A goaltender that they really haven't had for a little bit. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, if it's Sam Ersson in the net, then the game's probably a blowout if you think about it like that, where he allows soft goals after soft goals after soft goals. Dan Vladar is keeping this team involved in games, and he is the reason why they're even in positions to win the games that they are winning so far to start the season. And he just looks really good. He looks very, very good. And still, there's a lot of answers right now to whether if he can keep this up once he gets past that 30-game mark, because we all know he hasn't played more than 30 games in a season. So we're really going to have to wait and see until he gets past that threshold and see how much he carries that through. But right now, this is what Dan Vladar is. He's been very good for you. And until something else changes, this is what Dan Vladar is. And I think right now, he's the real deal until maybe eventually he does come back down to earth. Which maybe not. But we don't know. He's never played a full season in the NHL before as a goaltender. So it's just a wait-and-see process with him. But it's been very, very good. Just steady in net, makes the timely saves when he needs to, and he keeps the team involved in the game. Keeps them involved. And this team goes down a lot. They give up the first goal a lot. Somehow they come back to win these games. They win a lot of games from coming from behind. And if you look at the way they win, they don't have many regulation wins. This is only their 5th regulation win of the season. The other half of their wins are in the overtime or the shootout. So I think this is the first time in a little bit the Flyers have had a regulation win. First time in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely a work in progress with this team right now. It's good to see Michkov get on the scoreboard. It's good to see Tyson Forster have a couple of goals tonight as well. There's definitely some good things with this Flyers team, but, that Frank Saravalli comment definitely brought up a lot of frustrations that Flyers fans had, I guess, in the back of their minds, just with the way the rebuild is and how they've gone through the rebuild. And I think also a lot of that frustration comes up when you're constantly looking at the lineup sheet every night and a player like Nikita Grabankin isn't playing because for some reason Rick Tocchet just doesn't play him. And it's been more, and granted, he is playing in a fourth line role, but he's being, constantly, consistently getting scratched for guys like, Nick Delorier and all that stuff. And that throws, it frustrates a lot of Flyers fans because the mind process is you're in a rebuild. Shouldn't you be seeing what some of these young players have, like a Nikita Grabankin, because we already know what a Nick Delorier is. We already know what Garnet Hathaway is. We already know what Rodrigo Albals is at this point. So why not see what Grabankin can do? Because Tocchet also says a bunch of times that I got to find a way to get him into the lineup. I got to find a way to get him more ice time, and he just never puts him into the game. I know it's also coming off of, the Thursday game against St. Louis. The fourth line was one of the real reasons that gave the Flyers any momentum. It was probably their best line of the night on Thursday, and that line actually got one of their first points of the season, shockingly, with Rodrigo Albals getting the first Flyers goal on Thursday. But it definitely is a viable argument. It 100% is because, yeah, we know what Hathaway is. We know what Nick Delorier is. We should be seeing more of a guy like a Nikita Grabankin. And if you're going to constantly scratch this guy and not give him any ice time in the NHL, like what's the purpose of him being up here? Just send him down to the AHL where he can get some meaningful minutes if you're not going to put him into the lineup consistently here at the NHL level. So that definitely is a big question mark. And a lot of other things with the frustration with the Flyers team is still like, yeah, there's 100% question marks on where they're going to get that top line center, where they're going to get that number one defenseman, because obviously they don't have that within the prospect system. And with the way that things are going right now, because Frank Saravalli doesn't like that they're trying to compete for a playoff spot this year, he thinks they should still be, going at the bottom of the league, trying to get that high draft pick, which is still a very 100% clear, concise argument. I can understand why some people would think that, and it definitely rattled in the back of my mind too, like, why are we competing? This draft's supposed to be deep this year. Don't you think, it would help the rebuild if you can get another top draft pick, and maybe that top draft pick turns into a top center or possibly something like that, or even a top defenseman or something like that. So it definitely is understandable why you would think like that. And obviously, I have my questions too, because I don't know how this team is going to acquire a number one center. I don't know how this team is going to acquire a number one defenseman. The goalie, you might have the goalie in the pipeline. It's either, the Kolosov, it's either the Bjornsson, or it's either the Zafarikin over in the KHL. So, and Saravalli really said the goalie is probably the easiest one to find out of all those aspects between the center, the defenseman, and the goalie. It's really just how you're going to find that center, that defenseman, and just how are you going to do that? Because realistically, the only way you can acquire those things at this point is through the draft or through a trade. Because free agency ain't anything. Because all the people that were expected to hit free agency this offseason, they signed. They signed their contracts with their respected teams. McDavid signed, all these other players signed, Kaprizov signed, Eichel signed. It's free agency basically non-existent. It just isn't going to happen there. So at this point, if you do make the playoffs this year, you're not drafting high, obviously. You're not going to be in that lottery. So where realistically are you going to get that number one caliber franchise-altering center? Now, it's not to say that the Flyers don't have anything in the prospect system. Porter Martone looks fucking legit. He looks awesome with Michigan. He looks fucking awesome. This dude just scores nonstop. And granted, he's also on the best team probably in NCAA college hockey. That Michigan team, they're probably going to win something this year or go deep into the NCAA playoffs, maybe win the Frozen Four. But Porter Martone could also win the Hobie Baker Award. That's how fantastic this guy's playing. This kid's playing. And possibly you maybe could see him in the NHL at the end of the season because, the Olympic break does help out with that, with adding some games at the end of the year before after the college season ends. So if the Flyers do make the playoffs, maybe you could see Porter Martone in a Flyers uniform at that point. Or, you see him in a Phantoms uniform at the end of the season or something like that. Like, that would be very exciting to see because Porter Martone looks very legit. You have the Phantoms are very fun to watch right now. Alex Bump has got off to a slow start, but he's playing very well now down with the Phantoms. Same thing with a guy like a Denver Barkey. The guy Kairu that they got, I believe, from Dallas, that's down with the Phantoms. He's been playing very well as well. There are some interesting things down with the Phantoms, but, like, the main thing is they still don't have that center in the prospect system because no one really sees that in Jet Luchenko, even though he has been performing very well since being sent back down to Guelph. He's been getting a lot of assists. We don't know really what of a Jack Nesbitt. There's still really not that high praise of him to really be a top-line center. So it's understandable why people think like that, and very understandable whatsoever. Like I said, I have those dwindling thoughts in the back of my mind, and sometimes those thoughts come to the forefront of how my mind processes this entire thing is, how are you going to acquire those guys? Because you are so, like, heavy at the wing on the NHL roster in general and just in your prospect system. You're definitely going to have to move some bodies off this NHL roster if you're going to want to try to improve your team and maybe call some of these other guys up. Like, eventually you're going to be seeing a Porter Martone on the NHL roster. Eventually you might see an Alex Bump on the NHL roster, maybe even a Denver Barkey or something like that. You're going to have to trade some guys away on this roster and trade away some meat off the bone, whether that's a guy like an Owen Tippett or something like that. And I don't expect him to move on from a guy like Tyson Forster, maybe not move on from a guy like a Bobby Brink. I don't think they'd be able to move on from a Travis Konechny contract, and I don't think they want to trade Travis Konechny. Obviously, you're not trading away, Matvei Michkov. He's supposed to be the, part of your franchise future for the very long run here. So, Tippett might be the odd guy out, and maybe you're also going to have to look at a guy that you maybe not want to trade, but you have no other choice to, just because you're so stacked at the wing in terms of depth. And you're going to have to give up. And if you want to try to trade for somebody, but then the other argument comes at, what teams are really trading a top-line center? That's also a question mark right there. They don't really go on the market that often. Really, the only time you'll see that is when, either the guy requests out of town or the other organization that you're trading with is just a complete dumpster fire. Other people like to bring up the topic about, Jack Eichel being traded. That was a whole dispute between Eichel and Buffalo. Eichel wanted to get a certain surgery. Buffalo didn't want to. They weren't comfortable with it. They traded him to Vegas. He got the surgery, ends up winning a Stanley Cup eventually. So, you're going to have to find, or you're either going to have to take advantage of a team that's struggling, or they look like, okay, we got to hit the reset button and we're willing to give up some assets here off of our roster for assets in return. Maybe that's a team that you look at to try to trade with. People bring up Toronto because Toronto's really struggling this year, or do you still look at Buffalo because at the end of the day it's still the Buffalo Sabres? They're not going to find success at this point. Do you try to get a Tage Thompson off that team maybe? Because that definitely would be a very viable option if you can find a way to acquire a guy like Tage Thompson. That would be your top-line center. That would be very fun. That would be very exciting. So there's a lot of question marks that you have to deal with here. People keep bringing up Quinn Hughes from Vancouver if they continue to be bad. And Quinn Hughes, his contract expires after next season, so he'll eventually be a UFA. But would you want to try to trade for Quinn Hughes before he hits unrestricted free agencies because you think there might be just that added factor that he might want to go to the Devils to play with his brothers? I'm not entirely sure. But then you also have the Rick Tocchet effect that Quinn Hughes loves playing for Rick Tocchet. So I don't know. My mind goes back and forth on this entire thing every single day about how I feel. And yeah, I do have trust issues 100% because of the way this team has just been for so many years. And I don't blame people for thinking the way that they have been thinking. I really don't blame them, because I get into those lows too with this team. I really do. And those question marks are very true and they're very valid. How are they going to acquire that top line center? How are they going to acquire that number one true pairing game-changing defenseman? Travis Sanheim's been very good. He's been very good. He's worked himself up into a top pairing type of guy. Not the number one defenseman, but a guy that can play on your top pairing. Cam York's been very good this year, but is he truly a number one defenseman? Jamie Drysdale's been very good this year. Is he truly a number one defenseman? There's a question marks right there. Emil Andre has been very good in his short term that he's been called up here, and it looks like he should be staying up here for the long run, but is he truly a number one defenseman? Probably not. So you're going to have to find those guys. You definitely are. So, and they're going to have to be willing to trade guys off the roster that they probably don't want to trade. and they're going to have to make those decisions. They definitely are going to have to. They can't be waiting on something to happen. They got to take advantage of it. And if they think that they're a team that can take the next step and can make the playoffs or something like that, they got to be willing to be aggressive in the trade market. They got to be willing to be aggressive. I think that should be the case, in my personal opinion. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. Because there's definitely a lot of positives that you can talk about with this team, because they definitely are winning more games than you expected them to do. They definitely are. They have some young guys that are stepping up. Tyson Forrester, Trevor Zegras has been very good for this team since coming over with the trade from Anaheim. Been very good for you. Very good. I don't like that they've already given up on him being a center, because he's playing more wing than center, but he still has been very good for you. Matvei Michkov does look like he's getting better and better every single game, and we'll just see how that process goes. He gets the goal tonight, so we'll just see how he goes with that. Like I said, the Tyson Forrester, Noah Cates, those guys are always solid. Same thing with Bobby Brink. Those guys are always solid and sharp. And the defensemen, yeah, they do play a very sound defensive structured game. Granted, that didn't show tonight because the Devils kind of were all over them in certain aspects. But tonight was one of those just like weird back and forth games. Like after the Flyers like exploded for those 3 goals straight in like a very quick time span. It was like very back and forth in the second period and in the third period. It was very weird. It was very fun, and something that we definitely weren't used to with Flyers hockey this year, because it's definitely been more of a boring watch. It's been more of an not exciting watch. It's been more of like a Frank Seravalli also described it as like playing not to lose type of thing. But today was definitely more of the entertaining stuff. And someone brought it up to me today, like one of my buddies were texting me, maybe they were using the Frank Seravalli comments as bulletin board material, that they're using that as a fuel to the fire. Maybe that could be the case. Maybe that could be the case. We'll just have to wait and find out from there as well. But today was definitely very fun to watch. It definitely was. Sadly, I wasn't at the game because I wasn't home. We sold the tickets last night. So whoever bought the tickets from us definitely enjoyed their night. I would very assume there. So in the time that we haven't done recaps really. So the last Flyers game I believe we discussed was the game against Edmonton where they lost 2-1 in the overtime. Then we didn't recap I don't think we recapped the last week's game against St. Louis where they won in the shootout. Also the same thing with the Dallas Stars game. That game was just unwatchable. The second half of a back-to-back, they just got shit stomped by Dallas. Then they had 4 days off. Then they played St. Louis on Thursday and won that game in overtime, obviously. And then they went to tonight's game. So when you look at their record right now, they are back in that second wildcard spot. They're 11-6-3 on the season, if I'm not mistaken. I think that is the case. They got 25 points so far on the year. Their home record has been very good. They're 8-3-2 at home. They really obviously haven't played that many games on the road. They're 3-3-1 in that aspect. They're going to be playing a lot of road games actually upcoming this week. They play four games on the road this week of Thanksgiving. They play Monday in Tampa Bay, Wednesday in Florida. Then they have a road back-to-back on the 28th and 29th against the Islanders and the Devils, who they just played tonight. So that's one of their longest road trips of the season so far, but then they're back home basically for a 6-game homestand next week, where they play Pittsburgh, they play Buffalo, they play the Colorado Avalanche at 1 o'clock on a Sunday, they play the San Jose Sharks, they play the Vegas Golden Knights, and they play the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's like a home and home against Carolina, because they play at home against Carolina on the 13th, then in Carolina on the 14th. So definitely crazy. And then the rest of December, their next so many games, a lot of those are on the road. So they're definitely going to be tested. They're going to be tested a lot to see what this team is really made of. But it's definitely interesting. It's definitely intriguing with this team right now. If we just look at some of the stats as well, Trevor Zegras, he's got 21 points in 20 games, 7 goals, 14 assists. He's been very good. Like Travis Konechny, like the numbers I don't think tell the full story. And granted, Konechny can't hit the broadside of a barn right now. This dude has had so many open nets the past so many games, and this dude cannot bury it. He had a chance to win the game in regulation, actually, against St. Louis, where the puck took a weird bounce off the backboards and came to the front of the net, where the goalie for St. Louis was going to play it around the boards behind the net. The puck hits the boards, comes into the front of the net, and here comes TK with a wide open cage right there and whips it. completely whiffs it, hits the side of the net if I'm not mistaken, or he just hit the boards or something like that. So you could have won that game in regulation. And I think he had an open net in today's game in the second period if I'm not mistaken, and he whiffed on that. He hit the side of the net. So right now this dude is so snake-bitten it's not even funny. And he has 17 points in 20 games, 5 goals, 12 assists. He's a +4. I don't think he's playing the best. He definitely has been playing better. Definitely not the beginning of the season, Travis Konecny, where he looked completely ugly. But he's finding some chemistry, I guess you could say. He's been on a line with Forrester and Cates the past few games, and those guys are definitely doing something right there. Christian Dvorak is actually third on the team in points, which is crazy to even think of. 14 points in 20 games. He's been actually very good for you. Owen Tippett's got 13 points in 20 games. Noah Cates has been very good for you, 13 points in 20 games. Sean Couturier, 13 points in 19 games. Tyson Forrester, 10 points in 16 games. He's got 7 goals on the year, which is very nice. Bobby Brink, 10 points in 20 games. Mitchkov, 10 points in 20 games. Cam York's been very good for you, 10 points in 17 games. Jamie Drysdale, 8 points in 20 games. Goaltending-wise, let's look at that. Dan Vladar's been very good. He's 8-4-1, 2-4-2 goals against, 912 save percentage. Very good. Very good. Sam Harrison on the other side, we all know that. He's 3-1-2, but yeah, yikes. 8-4-6 save percentage, not good. Definitely not good. And we're going to be seeing Sam Harrison at some point during this week. Maybe twice during this week. Because of the 4-game road trip, and they do have a back-to-back in there as well. So we might see Sam Harrison maybe twice. Might see him twice. So that'll be very interesting. That'll be very interesting. But it was a good game. It was a good game for the Flyers. I think that's where we should really stand for tonight. I think the positivity is a good thing. It's definitely a positivity. Definitely a positivity type of thing. Like, there's things that they're doing where they're going in the right direction. I think there's just a lot of frustration with the fan base. I'm not sure if it's just more with the people that wanted the full-on, fully tank, if that makes sense. Full-on, fully tank. Get those top picks like year in and year out. And like granted, like I said, I've had those thoughts in the back of my mind as well. I think it really just is the thought of how are they going to acquire the positions of need that they have to get, specifically the center and specifically the defenseman. How are they going to acquire that? They have to get aggressive in the trade market at some point, especially if they think they're a team that can take that next step. You got to be aggressive in the trade market. You can't be scared to trade off pieces, to trade off assets. You have some assets here. You can find a way to trade some things off, get some value in return. And I do think if you want to try to go for that center, if you want to try to really do that, you have to go at Buffalo and look and see if you could acquire Tage Thompson. I think if you want to truly get a center that could change a dynamic of your team, you have to go get Tage Thompson. I think if that's the case. Now, granted, is Buffalo willing to give up Tage Thompson? I don't think Buffalo's a really ran well franchise, so there definitely is some consideration right there. There definitely could be. And I'm sure Tage Thompson has been there for a little bit. And that team just can't make the playoffs for the life of them. Tage Thompson is going to get aggravated eventually. He's probably going to want out. I'm sure if you asked him right now if Buffalo were to trade him, I'm sure he'd be okay with it if that meant going to a team that could possibly have a better chance at making the playoffs. So I think that's a team that you could definitely look at right there to maybe talk with, if that makes sense. Some people even talk about getting Rasmus Dahlin out of Buffalo too, but I would start with the center. I'd start with the center because I feel like that's the hardest part to get. The center is more hard than the defenseman, if that makes sense. So that should be their primary focus, is finding that center. Because if you find that center, it just moves the guys that are currently at the center position for you right now, moves them down a peg, and takes some pressure off of those guys. I would still like to see Zegras at center, just because if he can find a way to thrive at center, that makes it even better for you, because he could be a good second-line center. So then, say if you were to get a guy like a Tage Thompson is your first-line center, Zegras your second-line center, Noah Cates your third-line center, and maybe Sean Couturier your fourth-line center. Maybe that could be something that's drastically better. Drastically better, in my personal opinion. But we'll see. It's definitely interesting in Flyers land right now. There's a lot of positive people. There's a lot of negative people. And I guess that's just the the route of Flyers Twitter and just Flyers fandom in general. It's crazy. It is crazy. So we do have one voicemail here. It is from Tyler. Do we have a text message? No, we do not. No, we do not. That was from Sunday from the Eagles game. And we will be back tomorrow for Eagles Dallas as well. So we'll be back on the grind as well. And we will be doing more Flyers recaps this week as well. So let's see. Let's get to the voice lines here. Let's get to Tyler. Let's see what Tyler has to say on tonight's game.
What's going on, y'all? The mighty, mighty orange and the black put on a performance and whoop the Devils back. Alright, let me try not to be a poet and not even know it. The Flyers absolutely dominated, in my opinion. Look, I know the Devils came back and it was a 3-5 game late in the third or mid-third period, but the Flyers were able to come back and make it a 6-3 game. And I haven't seen the Flyers yet. I don't know if I don't know if I'm too young to know this or too young to see. I know I was young enough to see the Flyers versus Boston Bruins game in 2010 when they won 6-0 in the playoffs, but we got 3 goals within like the last minute of the first, or a minute in the first period. Just absolutely dominated. Hopefully this will be a preview of what the Eagles do to the Cowboys, but hockey is different from football. But I'm glad to see the Flyers whoop the Devils' ass. A rivalry showdown and a rivalry beatdown. And I'm proud. Brodes made a video a couple days ago, or last night, talking about how he was stressed out emotionally about the Flyers. But hopefully this will be a message that the Flyers are in it to win it this year. Now, I'm not going to get everybody's hopes up to say that they're going to win the cup, but we're making it in the playoffs and we're going to make it pretty far, in my opinion. And that'll be it. I feel it this year. So that'll be it for me. Talk to you next time. Go Flyers. Peace.
Well, I wasn't expecting that. To say that the Flyers are going to go far this year. Now, can the Flyers make the playoffs? 100%. If you look at the Eastern Conference, there is so much parity in the Eastern Conference this year. It's crazy. If you look at just the East in general, between where the Flyers are ranked right now, which is 8th in the Eastern Conference, they're in that last wildcard spot. Separation only between the Flyers and the last place team, which is the Buffalo Sabres, 5 points. Only 5 points. It is crazy. Flyers are tied with Pittsburgh right now. They're tied with Montreal. They're tied with Columbus, all with 25 points. Washington, they got 24 points. Florida, they got 23 points. Rangers, 22. Toronto, 21. And Buffalo, 20. And the teams that are above the Flyers, Boston, Islanders, Ottawa, Tampa, they all have 26 points. Detroit has 27 points. Devils have 27. And the Carolina Hurricanes, 30. So it's a separation of 5 points as well from where the Flyers are to the top of the Eastern Conference. There's so much parity. There's not one team that is running away with everything. There just isn't. The Devils looked like they maybe would have, but then Jack Hughes got hurt again, obviously. So that's another hurt to their season, and he's going to be out for a little bit because of an accident at a dinner where I believe he cut his finger or something like that with a knife accidentally. Insane. Detroit does look like they're taking the next step, but there's still always a question mark right there. Carolina's always going to be a good team. They're always going to be a tough team to play against. Tampa's been better this year. Ottawa's been better this year. The Islanders have been definitely a surprise story, and I think that a lot of that has to do with Matthew Schaefer because he's been dynamite for them. Boston's definitely been better this year, even though they have 10 regulation losses. That's crazy. Insane. So it looks like they don't go to overtime that much. Pittsburgh's been better this year. Montreal, they definitely died off a little bit. They've been losing a lot more than they've been winning. And yeah, there's just so much parity. Florida's still dealing with injuries, obviously, so I think that's what's affecting their record right now. The Rangers are the Rangers. They cannot win an MSG, but they're dynamite on the road. Insane. Toronto just isn't good this year. They have 1 win on the road. They're below 500. And Buffalo's Buffalo. So it's intriguing. Very intriguing. The best team in the league right now is Colorado by far. Colorado by far is the best team in the league. They have 1 regulation loss. 1 regulation loss. 15-1-5. Unheard of. Dallas is still Dallas. They're really good. Anaheim's definitely turned their corner this year. They've been a lot better this year. A lot of that has to do with Cutter Gauthier. A lot of that has to do with their young players. So that sucks to see. The Kraken have been good this year. Vegas is Vegas. So yeah, there's parity throughout the league this year. It's crazy. And the teams that are at the dead bottom, Calgary has been dreadful, Nashville's been dreadful, Vancouver's been dreadful, St. Louis has been dreadful, and there you go. But really, the truly dreadful teams have been Calgary and Nashville. That's basically it right there. So it's a lot of parity in the league this year. It's interesting. It's very, 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 very interesting. So in terms of Flyers going deep in the playoffs, they could make the playoffs. I wouldn't count on them going deep. Would not count. Could they upset somebody? Could they shock you and maybe win a round? It depends on the variables. It definitely does. If Dan Vladar plays the way that he is playing, yeah, maybe Dan Vladar can steal you around. But I'm not going to go that far. Not going to go that far. If they make the playoffs, that'll be a lot of positives for this. You know what I mean? Especially if you do see Porter Martin at the end of the year. That'd be very fun to watch, especially if he makes his debut in the playoffs. That'd be very fun. So, we'll see how everything goes. But like I said with the schedule, they got 4 road games this week. Tampa, Florida, Islanders, Devils. So we'll see what they do on the road trip. It'll be a tough one, but we'll see what this team's made of. We'll see what they're made of on the road trip. So that'll do it for tonight, everybody. Appreciate you all tuning in after a week of me not being here because of being sick. So don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It does me a great deal of service. Also use the code TTPSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. Great deal. Don't pass it up. We'll be live tomorrow after Eagles game. Eagles-Dallas for a recap of that. See where everything goes. If the Eagles can move the 9-2, or once again the offense will upset us and they lose that game. But who knows? Who knows? I'm not saying anything will happen. We'll see. We'll see. We'll be live for that recap tomorrow night. So